Evening folks, welcome to another interview. Today we've got a special guest come down to join us at the barbershop. We have the Croydon MP, Mr. Gavin Barwell. Thank you for coming down.
Pleasure, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, basically we sent a few tweets out, put up a few statuses on our Facebook to get some questions to kind of ask you, a little bit about yourself, a lot of the issues that are going on in Croydon right now. So, the first question is what is your main role? Like, what is your role and responsibilities?
Okay, so I think there's two main bits to being an MP, and then I've got one thing on top of that that all MPs have. So I'd say the two main parts of the MP job. One is there are 650 of us, and if you want to change any of the laws in the country about the taxes you pay, or how schools are run, or how football's governed, you've got to convince half the MPs to vote for it. So part of the job is deciding what the laws of the country should be, essentially. The other part of the job is completely different, and it's based here in Croydon, and that's if anyone that lives in the area that I represent has got a problem and they want to come and see me and ask for help, I'm here, essentially. So you can get asked the weirdest range of things that people want to help you get involved in, but that's a very different type of work to the first part of the job. And then in addition to that, I'm also a sort of junior government minister, so some MPs get made government ministers.
So are you quite contactable then for residents to get hold of you?
I hope so. So the key thing I think is to try lots of different ways, because different people use different technologies and different channels of communication. So I've got an office, first of all, I'm the first MP for the area to have a shopfront office that people can just walk in and talk to my staff. That's on Wickham Road. But I also spend time every weekend just going out and knocking on people's doors, talking to people about what they're concerned about and how they'd like to see Croydon change. I put leaflets out, surveys out fairly regularly. I've got a website. I try and use social media as well, like you've used to get questions for the interview. So I think you've just got to try lots of different ways because obviously people are busy with the lives they lead, just to try and get feedback about what it is they want you to do.
So what are your future plans for Croydon? I mean, there's a lot of whispers about Westfields and all the other 20-year Croydon redevelopment plan and things like that. So, I mean, enlighten us. What's happening? Okay.
So the first thing I'd say is that actually on Monday of this week I've just published a document called My Vision for Croydon. And so people can go on the internet, they can have a look at it. It's a long thing with lots of different information there, but if I was going to pick out 2 or 3 things for you, I'd say the biggest thing is our local economy here in the town centre. And getting the Westfield to happen as quickly as possible. We don't want to wait 20 years. So I'm hopeful that we can do it over the next sort of 3.5 years and get the new centre open. And I think that will make a massive difference to Croydon's reputation. It will encourage other people to invest here as well. So getting the local economy right so that we can create good jobs for everybody, I think is the top priority. After that, the next thing that I would probably pick on is trying to improve our schools. We've got some great schools in Croydon at the moment, but not all of them are good enough. If we want businesses to locate here, if we want to create the jobs for young people in the future, we need to make sure we've got some of the best educated, most highly skilled kids. And that's not just, for some of them that might mean A-levels and top universities, but it's also about having good vocational qualifications that can lead people on into various trades and getting that all round right.
Speaking about schools, have you got any plans to kind of build any new schools in the area?
Yeah, we're definitely going to need to, because the population of Croydon is growing all the time. So there's several new ones that just opened this September, and there are a number more that are opening next September, and then the September after that. It's not easy, because I think probably when you and I think of a school, we think of a low-rise building with some nice playing fields around it. We haven't got a lot of land of that kind left, unless we're building our parks, which I don't think people would want us to do. So often it's about taking other buildings and seeing how could we convert them into a school and find some creative ways of making sure there's enough play space and all that kind of thing. But we're going to need lots of new schools.
Well, I mean, we've got quite a few empty buildings in the Croydon area, so would that be part of the plan to redevelop those? And
so look, there's a good example just up the road for you here. So if you come to the top of St George's Walk and turn right, you've got a building called Sagas House, and the council's looking at whether that could be turned into a primary school, for example.
I know that Croydon College was thinking about opening
so they're looking at having a free school on their campus there, which is an interesting idea. Just down the road from here, if you go up London Road, where the Croydon General Hospital used to be, that big bit of vacant land, is going to be a Harris Academy there. So there's lots of sites all across the borough where we're going to need to look at building new schools.
Well, I mean, that's a good question actually, because with the whole redevelopment of Croydon, we're going to have more people moving into Croydon. That's going to put a strain on the local what are they called?
The infrastructure,
the
services,
the hospitals, the
Yep.
bus. Like, has that all been taken into full consideration?
I think people are certainly thinking about it. I'm not sure we've got all the answers yet, but that was going to be my third priority.
Yeah.
So school places, a new A&E department for the hospital, which is the bit that's really under pressure, I think.
Yeah.
But also like the trains up to London, making sure that we've got longer, more frequent trains, the tram system, and just building the houses that can accommodate these people.
Yeah.
So getting all of that sort of infrastructure right. Otherwise, the people that already live here might think, well, actually, the population growing is going to make things worse for me if we don't get that right. So that's really important.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. With the whole redevelopment plan, how is local business being looked after in this? I mean, how are you planning to support local businesses? For example, St George's Walk here.
Yeah.
Like, what's gonna happen with that?
Well, St George's Walk, I think, is a really good example of how, if things are not done properly, local businesses can be badly affected, because the previous council but one had this plan to extend the Whitgift Centre right up through St George's Walk.
Yeah.
And the result was that all the businesses were sort of either moved out of St George's Walk, or they couldn't get long leases, and a number of them closed down, and then it never happened.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everyone always talks to me about Turtles.
Yeah.
This great iconic Croydon business that was essentially put in an impossible position by the council. So it's really important that they engage with the businesses that are here. That to do the Westfield redevelopment, we're going to have to redevelop the Whitgift Centre.
Yeah.
So the shops that are there are going to have to have somewhere they go temporarily while that's being done before they move back into the new centre.
Yeah.
And it's not just the Whitgift Centre that we want to redevelop. I think people would like to see this area redeveloped as well. And again, that's about helping the businesses that are here finding alternative premises so that we don't lose businesses from the town.
So will the local businesses here be moved out, or?
If St George's Walk was completely redeveloped, they would have to be, but for the Westfield one, they won't have to be. There's this thing called a Business Improvement District, which you'll be members of, being located here. So obviously they are a strong voice for the business community in Croydon. But it's really important that the council engages with all of the businesses to give them a clear understanding of what's happening when and what effect it's going to have on their trade, and if they're going to have to look to relocate temporarily while redevelopment work is being done.
So where exactly is the Westfield going to be?
So the Westfield is, roughly speaking, in the rectangle between Wellesley Road, Poplar Walk, North End and George Street.
Okay.
It's nearly all of that.
Yeah.
Basically the Whitgift Centre and the older store and some of the surrounding buildings.
Yeah.
But this area here is owned by a company called Minerva, and they have a scheme that hasn't come forward yet to planning permission to redevelop this area as well.
St George's
Walk, yeah.
Okay, so that hasn't been...
So that's not gone through yet, planning, but I hope it will come over time.
Yeah, okay, cool. This is another question which has come up quite a few times actually. Again, with the whole redevelopment of Croydon, is the young people. Mm-hmm. How do they fit into this? Because a lot of the youth centres have been closed down over the past few years. Going forward, I mean, how will you be supporting the young people with adequate training, getting jobs, job opportunities, things like that?
So to start with a bit of good news, if you look at the sort of 4 years that I've been an MP, the number of young people unemployed in my constituency has gone down by nearly a half. So actually, as the economy has recovered under this government, starting growing, it is getting younger people into work, but there's still far too many that haven't got work or training. So it is absolutely something we've got to focus on. One of the things that I'm pushing the council to do is to work with Westfield and Hammerson to set up a proper training academy, so as many as possible of the 5,000 odd jobs that are going to be created for the redevelopment go to local people.
Yeah.
So that if we're going to create all these jobs in Croydon, it'd be great that our own unemployed people get as many of those jobs as possible.
It makes sense.
But longer term, in terms of the other part of your question was really about things for young people to do.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think we could do a much better job of is trying to make sure that our school buildings are actually accessible in the evenings, at weekends, during school holidays, because a lot of them have got great facilities that we could run youth clubs out of. We don't necessarily need separate buildings that are youth club buildings.
Yeah.
It's about making 24 hours a day, 7 days a week use of the facilities that we have got.
Yeah. And so in terms of the young people, I mean, a lot of them feel quite disillusioned at times. How would you go about inspiring them, the young people that we have in the area?
So I think that's a tough question. I mean, I suppose the starting point is we've got to convince them that if they work hard and they've got talent and ideas, they've got a great chance in life. And I think that's the problem. A lot of them have felt that I've started off on the wrong side of the tracks, and I've got whatever I do, I've not got a fair crack of the whip. So we've got to convince them that isn't true. So how do we do that? Well, I think first of all, it's about improving the schools. So they've got to feel the school that I go to is actually going to give me the skills I need to do well in life. If I do my bit and I study, I'm going to get something out of it at the end of the day. But it's also, I think, maybe about having sort of mentoring schemes and things like that show people, like, here's someone, what is it you want to do? Okay, great, well, here's someone who's achieved something in that field, and they're there to help and support and advise you. And then also the other thing I find often about when I meet young people in the borough, sometimes they haven't got the best qualifications, but they've got talent, they've got ideas, they've got enthusiasm. So actually, can we provide ways in which we can help them set up their own businesses and turn those ideas into their own careers?
Is that something that you'd be looking to do?
Yes, it's something the government sort of looked at partly in terms of sort of reforming the benefit system, saying, well, rather than just sort of potentially paying people benefits if they're out of work, can we actually give them some kind of start-up grant so if they've got an idea, they've got something they've got a passion for, that they think they're good at and that they want to do, that we can give them a helping hand to turn that into an idea, and they can actually work for themselves. Because for many people that may be the dream, actually. If you can create your own business, something you're passionate about, then that could be a great opportunity for people. So that's something that we're already looking at a bit, but I think we could do more.
What are your thoughts on the current academic curriculum then? Do you think that is adequate? Do you think it needs changing in any way?
But personally, I'm not a great fan of the government setting a huge curriculum that everyone has to study. I'd like to see individual schools having freedom to experiment a little bit and work out what they think is right for their students. I think there's a sort of bare minimum that we need everyone to do. Actually, in today's economy, we need to make sure that everybody, when they leave education, has got a basic level in maths and in English, and we know some of the subjects that employers really value. But also, I've got 3 sons myself. Children are different. They've got different aptitudes, different things they're interested in. So actually having schools that specialise in particular areas that are right for particular children makes sense. We've got a great example here in Croydon, which is the Brit School. In terms of national centre of excellence for people that have got a real passion for the performing arts. And I think we could develop that in lots of different ways. And so there's a school that's due to open in a couple of years' time, which is going to be called the Croydon Gateway STEM Academy, which is going to be a sort of specialist sixth form college for kids that are passionate about science and technology and engineering. And I think we could go further down that road and actually see different schools developing different approaches that might be suitable for different kinds of young people that have interest in different areas.
I mean, definitely. So for example, how would you go about that? Because a lot of people that I speak to, the curriculum always comes up. It's inadequate. We're not teaching, especially the black youth, about adequate history. Black history is kind of non-existent in the curriculum. How would you go about changing that?
Well, what the government is doing is that more and more schools are becoming academies. And if they're academies, they basically are free from the national curriculum, subject to some very some small limitations, but they basically have freedom over the curriculum that they teach. And that should allow them to respond to what it is that parents want on the particular issue of history and teaching black history. I'd say 2 things. I think it's important that is included in the curriculum. I think it's important that story is told. But I'm also really passionate at thinking that actually whatever your ethnic background, people that grow up in this country are British and they have every much right to entitlement to the full story of British history as anyone else, if you see what I mean. So I think you need to do both things. You need to give everybody a good grounding in British history and how we got to where we are today. But it's also important that that young people from particular ethnic backgrounds, learn about who they are and where they came from as well.
I mean, that's something that I find personally is something that I'm quite passionate about. Because of course we live in Britain, so it's imperative that we all learn British history. But at the same time, we live in such a diverse culture now. We have people from so many different ethnic backgrounds. I think that it's vital that everyone kind of learns a little bit of their history and kind of a true reflection of their history. So, for example, with the black history, you'll find that it usually starts at slavery as the base point of the history, but there's not really anything that goes beyond that, like what was happening before that, like our history before that. The information is out there, however, it's reaching it to the young people is proving to be quite difficult. So I do think that is something that it's a personal thing that I think that really should be implemented into schools, because knowing that you have a culture, that you have a history to start with, and that it's not just from being brought over here, is the first step in kind of giving a person self-worth and value. Absolutely,
and I suppose one of the things I'd say to you is, I think it's important not just for young black boys and girls to learn that, but for all people growing up to learn that. Actually, there's a danger that we teach, if we just teach what traditionally would have been thought of as British history, you miss out on part of the story about what was going on in other parts of the world, before colonialism and all of that came along. So I agree with you, but I think it's not actually just necessarily for young black children growing up. They need to learn that story.
Another question that I've got here, litter. That's a big issue. I'm not sure if this is true, but apparently the litter in Croydon area is only collected bi-weekly, whereas other areas it's obviously weekly. So why is that?
So it depends what you mean. If you mean the litter from the street, that's not necessarily true. Some areas of the borough have much more frequent litter, sort of street sweeping collections than that. I think whoever sent you that question was probably talking about like the wheelie bin, the sort of household rubbish that we throw out, and that is fortnightly. The reason the council did that is it wanted to encourage people to recycle. So at the time it introduced that, it also introduced a whole load of recycling services, so you can get your food waste and glass bottles and tins and cans and paper and cardboard and all these things. They get collected from separately from your general rubbish. And so before the council did this, we were one of the worst places in the country for recycling. We were recycling about 15% of our household rubbish, and now we're up at nearly 50%, and we're one of the best places in London. So I know it can be frustrating, particularly for large families who are not often aware that they can get a larger wheelie bin. So if you're a large family, you should contact the council and ask for a larger wheelie bin. But actually I think there is a case for trying to encourage people as much as possible to recycle rather than just chucking stuff away into the general rubbish.
Okay. Another question we've got here is, I've had this one quite a few times, the bedroom tax. So for the people that don't know, could you kind of just explain what is the bedroom tax? What is the purpose of the bedroom tax?
Okay, well first of all, it's not a tax. What it is a change to the benefit rules. And what it says is that previously, if you were renting in the private sector, you could only get enough housing benefit to provide for a flat or a house that was the size you needed for your family. But if you were council or housing association property, you could get extra that would allow you then to have spare rooms, essentially. So what the spare room subsidy is, what the government calls it, does is it reduces the housing benefit that you get in if you're in council or housing association property, to try and encourage people to move to a property that is the right size for their family. And the reason the government's doing that is there's a big waiting list, particularly for the larger council and housing association houses, 3 or 4 bedrooms. And we really want to make sure that those houses are going to large families that desperately need them, not being used by people that actually don't need all that space anymore. But I accept, it's quite a tough thing, because it does mean people that might have lived in a house for a long time, their kids have grown up and moved out, they're now being asked to move, sort of downsize to a smaller property, and this place feels like their home that they've been in for a long time. So I understand why people get quite emotional about it, but the rationale from the government side is to try and free up that property, those really valuable large properties, for the families that desperately need them. And I get them. That every week at my surgery, people that are living in overcrowded conditions and are desperate for a bigger council home.
What would happen if someone is being asked to downsize, but there are no smaller places available?
So that's the key here, is making sure that there's enough supply of 1 and 2 bedroom properties, and the council in Croydon is working very hard to do that and to try and arrange swap. Sometimes actually you can do direct swaps, because you might have a family that's living in a 2 bedroom property that is really overcrowded, and another family that's in a sort of 4 bedroom property and there's underoccupying, and you actually try and arrange a direct exchange. That's what we're trying to do.
Okay, cool. Finally, last question is, for a person who's interested in getting into politics and wants to become an MP, what are your tips to becoming a successful MP?
The first thing I say to anyone is that there's no single route that you should follow. If you look at the people in Parliament, they've done all sorts of things before they were MPs. So there's no one single thing you have to do. It's not like becoming a doctor or a lawyer where you have to have a particular qualification to do it. The most important thing I would say is passion for the area that you want to represent, and for the country as a whole, and to be someone who's got ideas about how you want to change things for the better. And the second most important thing I would say is to try and be someone who's a good people person with people of lots of different backgrounds. If you take the area that I represent, it ranges at one end to the sort of footballers' wives' houses up on the top of Shirley Hills, to parts of South Norwood and New Addington that are really quite deprived areas. And there's an incredible range of ages and people of different ethnic backgrounds and people of different sort of wealth, essentially, that live within my constituency. And I've got to be as comfortable knocking on the door of someone very wealthy or someone who's really struggling, knocking on the door of someone who's just arrived here, maybe from Somalia or from Afghanistan, or an elderly pensioner couple who've lived in Croydon all their lives. And for those people to feel equally comfortable to talk to me about what their problem is and how they're looking for me to help. So I think those sort of interpersonal skills are one of the really important parts of the job.
Okay, cool. All right, what I've got now is, I'm going to call this the quick fire round.
Right.
Because I've got a few a couple of these came from Twitter, so I'm just going to fire off these questions.
Okay.
I just want a one-word answer.
Right.
All right, so Man U or Man City?
Neither. Liverpool.
PC or Mac?
PC.
PS3 or Xbox?
It would be PSC.
Ribena or Vimto?
Ribena.
Plantain or Plantain?
Plantain.
And the last MC or rapper that you listen to?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Well, when I was young, the band that I followed a lot was Public Enemy, so Chuck D. That's a long time ago, obviously.
Very
I went to a number of their concerts. So
Drake?
Yeah, I listen a little bit. It's mainly now it's listening to the music that my sons play, so I get a bit of that.
Fair enough. All right, Gavin, thank you for coming down. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Good to meet you.
Hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
That'd be great. Thanks for your time.
Lovely.
Cheers.
That was the end of that show, guys. Make sure that you subscribe, like, and leave your comments below, and we'll catch you on the next episode.